Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. I was 21 years old when I first heard Ginny Apuzzo speak. It was 1979, and I think it probably was Boston. And from the minute I heard her, I was smitten. Women did not claim their political power, their space in the mainstream world as out lesbians, their intellect and their humor as boldly as Ginny did and still does. She said things persuasively and eloquently. She was tough and strong and yet completely warm and accessible. Over the past 3 decades, I've learned so much from you, Ginny. It's a real honor to have you make this presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you also to each of you and to SAGE's board and to Michael Adams and the staff for this generous recognition. I'm really thrilled to be here with Edie Windsor, who is amazing and inspiring. And I'm deeply, deeply touched to receive an award named after Ken Dawson, another early leader in the LGBT movement that I was lucky enough to work with and to learn from. Ken was a kind and gentle man. I don't think I ever saw him raise his voice or be really snarky about anybody, which is a real achievement in the context of the New York movement in the 1980s. I'm also delighted to receive a SAGE Award a year after my partner in life, 23 years, Kate Clinton, got one. You know, I always say there was definitely something good I did in my previous life that led me to meet Kate in this one. And yes, she's as wonderful at home as she is as a writer and a comic. Thank you, Kate, always for your love and your constant creative inspiration. Any recognition I ever get in key measure belongs to you as well. I also want to recognize and thank my sister Rachna Vaid for being here. She's here with my niece Kaveri Vaid and nephew Shantanu Vaid and their respective partners Isaac Leamer and Leah Weisberg. And also my beloved friend Susan Ali and her partner Karen Krahulik. You know, I'm really blessed to have strong LGBT family and family of origin that has supported me as an activist in my life. People in this room, and indeed in our entire LGBT liberation and women's liberation movements, once fought fiercely to create the space for very different ideas of manhood and womanhood, of gender and sexuality, than we do today. It was not only a fight to allow space for transgender existence, although I believe that was and remains a critical part of our work. Rather, our vision of gender and sexual liberation was to see it as part of the democratic freedom we thought and believed that each person ought to have. We fought for freedom in the way that Walt Whitman wrote about it, the freedom to treat each other as comrades, equals, friends. We celebrated ourselves and built institutions to affirm the values and aspects of our gender and identities that were dehumanized, denied, and shamed by the mainstream. We fought for choice, for self-determination, and for independence from state and religious dictates about how we should live our lives. And we built a global social movement to counter the idea that we were abnormal and unnatural, criminal and sinful, unworthy of human rights and dignity, unable to form family or make commitments. And we have made huge progress. It is remarkable. Yet, along the way, we have made a number of compromises that warrant our consideration. We separated ourselves from feminism to the impoverishment of the gay and lesbian liberation movement. The patriarchy, a dated word that remains relevant, remains strong and thriving. Look at the condition of women and men. Women still earn 30% less than men in America, still are underrepresented at all political and economic tables. Women in the US and around the world still experience enormous incidences of violence and brutality. And femaleness is still denigrated and hated in many parts of the world. And let us also be clear that the patriarchy chains men as ferociously as it does women. Men are shamed, humiliated, and violated in a million degrading ways to conform to shallow forms of humanity known as traditional masculinity. Every culture enforces destructive ideas of manhood on men, wrapped up in tradition and religion, from the Promise Keepers to the Taliban. We progressed from building... I'm going to tell it. I think we've progressed from building a politics centered in our own dreams and experiences of otherness, of outsiderness in the 70s and 80s, to a politics that's all about our desire for sameness and our longing to belong in the 90s and in the present decade. The focus of our movement changed from making ourselves comfortable with the non-traditional notions of sexuality and gender, of power and equality, of justice and freedom that we embodied, to making 51% majorities comfortable with us. We began to try to fit into a heterosexist world instead of committing to expanding justice and freedom for all. We endorsed D'Amato and other choice zealots. Instead of showing the straight world how we could help it heal itself from the damage of sexual abuse, lies, sexual shame, deadening roles, we insist to the straight world that we're no different from it in any way, that no fundamental change will be required if we are allowed into existing structures of family, economy, and governance. The social service organizations like SAGE in our community provide a window into the truth that LGBT people are not all wealthy or working in Fortune 500 companies. Yet we have gone from being a movement deeply concerned with the internal inequalities in our own communities that privilege some and prevent others from realizing full freedom, to being a movement that is almost entirely represented publicly by people who argue that when we win marriage and military admission, when we win ENDA, we will have won. Absent a consideration of how disparities around income and economic condition form new dividing lines between those who are able to experience the formal rights we have won and those who still live without any semblance of equality, we really can't say that we have won. What is the experience of homophobia of the LGBT person who has no health insurance, or who cannot choose their health care provider, or who cannot send their kids to private schools, or who cannot supplement their SSI with private dollars for the home health care aid? We've neglected to build relationships of depth and meaning with our allies and communities of color, and we've under-resourced the parts of our communities that are people of color. Indeed, only 2 of the heads of more than 40 national LGBT organizations today are people of color, and one of those organizations represents people of color. We've come so far and compromised so far in the name of a gay and lesbian movement that we have groups inviting misogynists and racists like Ann Coulter to pro-marriage fundraisers. We have groups in the name of LGBT rights targeting champions of human rights like Barney Frank and Nancy Pelosi, while endorsing idiots like John McCain and Meg Whitman. We have come so far. We have come so far that we have moved from fighting against the unfair characterization of LGBT people as criminal and as illegal people to being a community in which some would abandon defending the same principles when it comes to immigrants. As one of the people in this room who fought very, very hard in a wide range of social movements to bring ideas of justice and equality, of human rights and human needs as far as we have to this point, as someone like many of you who intends to keep on fighting, I want to say to you that these deviations, these silences, these moments in which core values of justice have been sacrificed for pragmatism or opportunism do not sit well with me. I am not a member of any LGBT movement that narrows its focus away from ending sexism, racism, and economic injustice. There is nothing inevitable or unavoidable about a reactionary turn in politics. Fascism often comes about quite legally and with the consent of majorities. I hope that the LGBT movement, with our friends and families, organizes firmly against the right in all its forms. I hope that we organize from the perspective that we stand against traditions of all kinds, that we have been outsiders to family, government, and the economy, and that the price of admission in the world should not be the erasure of our experience of exclusion, the erasure of differences, much less the abandonment of our imagination for a truly different social order. As Walt Whitman wrote in the Calamus poems, in Leaves of Grass, Calamus 34, I dreamed in a dream, I saw a city invincible to the attacks of the whole of the rest of the earth. I dreamed that was the new city of friends. Nothing was greater there than the quality of robust love. It led the rest. It was seen every hour in the actions of the men of that city and in their looks and words. The success of the LGBT liberation movement lies in our never losing our freedom to dream different solutions to the dilemmas facing our world. It lies in our radical compassion and the effective deployment of our power to build a new and more egalitarian city of friends. Thank you very, very much.